Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Hurdy Burke Internet Broadcast Network, and we are on the Power Hour with Danielle Smith. If for some reason you've never moseyed over, go over to Facebook group and look up Power Hour Broadcast. Danielle Smith, join the group. We've got 15 podcasts up there, and we're continuing with number 16, I believe, tonight. And we're going to talk about No Limits, John Maxwell's book, and we're going to talk about energy capacity, your ability to push on physically. Danny, take it away, my friend.
Hey, dude. How you doing?
I'm good.
Well, I practiced this energy a few minutes ago. I'll tell you in a minute how I practiced it as we go along. You know, this is I read this book back in April, May of this year, 2017, and it was a planned read. I've mentioned this before. You've heard me say this. But I had planned coming into 2017, had a few books that I wanted to read. John's book on intentional living was one, with a immediate follow-up to that, No Limits. And read those books back to back, and it was a major boost for me. I'm going to be talking about this chapter we're going to cover tonight. For a few minutes, we're just going to cover the start of part 2, which is ability. And let me back up to the contents. This book, a reminder, book's got part 1, awareness, part 2, ability, and part 3, choices. And I think we get stuck a lot of times in our growth, and that's even if we think we need to grow, if we want to grow, we don't realize we're going to grow in one direction or another. And I've spent too much of my own time just going with the flow. And to go with the flow, it just doesn't work real well. We end up in places that we don't want to be. Zig Ziglar, I guess I probably quote this quote more than anything else. I heard him say this in 1988 or 89, the first time, that we're going to be the same 5 years from today as we are today, except for what we read, who we hang out with, what we watch, and what we listen to. And that exercise I've talked about on the call before, Hurdy, you and I have talked about it, where we go back into our past, do a timeline, and pinpoint successes, not failures, but successes that we've had. And as we look what was going on around us at that time, our environment, our energy, what we were doing, what was feeding us, not just at that point, but in the months and years leading up to it, I've started realizing how much or just how wise Zig Ziglar was back. So he died in his 80s. So he was in his 60s, late 50s when I first heard him say that. I'm going to look that up later. But tonight, I forget what podcast it was, Hurdy, but we did an overview of this book, and we're going to take one of these 512 calls, these Power Hour calls from time to time, and dig deeper into each of these capacities over the next few weeks and months. But tonight, we're going to talk about our energy capacity. And this is in part 2. Part 2 is ability, developing the capacities you already possess. So you think about it. We already possess it, so why not develop it? And one is being energy. And actually, I almost went with emotional tonight. I'm kind of dealing with what I'm thinking about the most. And so the energy capacity, your ability to push on physically, and he doesn't talk about it in here, but it's in this book, and it's not in this chapter, but it's in this book where I learned about Jesse Eisler and David Goggins' book, Living with a SEAL. And incredible book. Language is not real clean. It's not clean at all, but it's about, the book is really about one thing: mental toughness and energy, and is a lot about mental toughness and being mentally tough to put forth the energy. About 45 minutes ago, I had thought of, it ought to take me about a 10-minute power nap.
There you go.
No, it wasn't either. You know what I did?
Oh.
I got on my stair climber for 5 minutes and rode that sucker really, really hard. And it was a mental game that I had to play with myself to make me get on there. I got on there, rejuvenated, got off, and listened to a little bit of George Strait and Flash Dance. Don't laugh at me. So
in it to win it. There we go. All right.
So anyway, the book, what does John say here? John says some things about energy, and he tells a story in here how he was in his late. He doesn't say how old he is, but I think he was in his late 50s, but was counting down his days to 70 when he was going to retire, and something that he was doing. And then it was a man named Bill Hybel who he said to him, have you lost your marbles? What do you think you're doing? You can't quit. You can't plan now to quit at age 70. And I think too many times that's what we do. We start planning on slowing down. So John said that he found out he needed to do 4 things. He needed to re-engage, reinvest, reinvent, and replenish. And we're going to break those down just a little bit here in the next few minutes. But I remember thumbing through this book the first time before I even, a lot of times I'll just kind of skim through a book before I start reading it, and I locked onto this bold subchapter heading: why you should focus on energy instead of time.
Yeah.
You think about it. Focus.
Yeah.
What?
I just read that in the notes too. I'm like, what?
Energy, according to a book, he quotes a book, The Power of Full Engagement. Energy, not time, is the fundamental currency of high performance. Yeah. So it's not managing, and what it goes on to say here is it's not managing your time that's most important. It's managing your energy. The ultimate measure of our lives is not how much time we spend on the planet, but rather how much energy we invest in the time that we have. The premise of this book, meaning The Power of Full Engagement, and of the training we do each year with thousands of clients, is simple enough: performance, health, happiness. They're all grounded in the skillful management of energy. The number of hours in a day is fixed, but the quantity and quality of energy available to us is not. It is our most precious resource. The more we take responsibility for the energy we bring to the world, the more empowered and productive we become. The more we blame others or external circumstances, the more negative and compromised our energy is likely to be. Unquote. Jack Welch, the legendary former CEO of General Electric, maybe the most productive CEO there's ever been. There's a section here in the book about how he put a great emphasis on a candidate's energy when he hired his leaders. He valued stamina over many other qualities because he believed it was important for leadership sustainability. He also valued a leader's ability to energize others and motivate a team to be productive. John outlines 3 R's applied to energy. He says over the years he's noticed that people who reach their capacity do not sit back and wait for things to happen. he's been teaching the 3 R's that he uses for prioritizing: requirement, what I have to do; return, what I do well; and reward, what I love to do. And then what happens when all 3 of those line up together. Questions that help him, John says, questions that help me maximize energy. And I'm just going to skim over these, but let me skim them real quick and come back and dig into a couple of them. One is the plugged-in question. When am I fully charged? Number 2, the depletion question. What wears me down? Number 3, the proximity question. How accessible are my energy pluses? We're going to talk about that in a minute. Number 4, the 100% question. When do I need to be full of energy? And number 5, the margin question. We're going to dig into this one. Where's the space for things I need but haven't planned? So, the plugged-in question, when am I fully charged? When you are fully charged, he says, you get more done. Some of this is kind of like, duh. You have better interactions. Your mind is sharp and your body is strong. On days when you are fully charged, you experience high levels of engagement and well-being. And that seems a bit, well, of course, you'd say, but I don't believe most of us engage in that energy and engage with really, think about it. Why is it sometimes, I remember in a couple of notes I've got here from whenever I read the book this past spring is why is it that sometimes I get up in the mornings and I'm full of energy, sometimes I'm not? But John points out in this chapter about what goes into our mind, what goes into our mouth. So, the output we have in form of energy, I think that comes from the night before, the food, maybe some exercise the day before, the night before, what's going into my mind before I go to bed. What was the process? Did I go sleep in my chair on the couch watching TV, or did I go to bed? And John hits on all of this here in this chapter. And we have to, but we really, we need to know. That's a strong word, maybe need. We need to know what fully charges us. What, number 2, what wears me down? And these are questions that John asks to help him understand ways to maximize his energy. And I've been around John just a little bit. I got a couple of close friends that have been around John a lot, and he practices this stuff. What wears me down? Knowing what wears me down. There's sometimes that I come out of an appointment and I'm just wore out. And it took me a long time to realize why I was, and some of it had to do with expectations or not having expectations for the purpose of going into the appointment. And I come out wore out. When I go in thinking about my purpose, when I go in thinking about why I have this appointment. I was up at Job Seekers this morning for an hour and 10, 15 minutes, came out energized. But I went in knowing what I was going there to do, how I was going to be conducting a session, for what purpose I was going to be conducting that session. And I tell you, I've come out of many of those over the years, volunteering up there, and just wore out. But I came out energized, and it all had to do with I knew why I was going in there. I wasn't going to let anybody suck the energy out of me and focus maybe just on one person. And anyway, so know why our energy is depleted. Number 3, how accessible are my energy pluses? Love this part right here. This whole section of this chapter has to do with the law of environment. One of the, what I was teaching up at Job Seekers this morning about the laws of growth, and specifically we talked about the law of environment. I turned on some music that inspires me. 10, 15 minutes here before our call today. That's part of the knowing the songs that lift us up, the thoughts, and I'm just going to go through here what John's got listed. Music, the songs that lift you, thoughts, the ideas that speak to you, experiences, activities that rejuvenate you, the friends, the recreation, the spiritual exercises that strengthen you, the dreams that inspire you, the family members who care for you, talents that activate you that you have, your giftedness, your memories, your recollections that make you smile, and books and messages that change you. I've got an author I love reading, Michael Connelly. But it dawned on me about a year ago that, and I realized I'd noticed it before, that when I read a Michael Connelly novel, I'm kind of down. I enjoy the book the whole way through, but I'm kind of down from it. And I go, what is up with that? And a few months later, I read one again, paid attention to my feelings as I read it. Well, Horatio Bosch is his name. He's a L.A. detective, a little bit of a sourpuss, and not the happiest guy in the world, a little bit smug, very sure of himself, very good detective. Now, this is, by the way, the author is the guy that wrote The Lincoln Lawyer, and Harry Bosch is the lawyer, the Lincoln Lawyer guy's half-brother. But he's kind of down, and I finished those books down, and I haven't read one in almost a year. Because of that, because I know certain books lift me up, certain books bring me down. The book Living with a Seal is laying over here beside my chair, and it will stay there for a long time because I just pick it up and read 2 or 3 pages of it and get re-energized about exercising and the how much of a mental wimp I can be if I don't. It's exercise. I've become convinced, and he doesn't say that in the book, that if you don't exercise, it's because you're a mental wimp. How about that one, Herdy?
I like it. Yeah, it's true.
But So the margin question, and we're going to pretty much finish up with this right here. The margin question: where is the space for things I need but haven't planned? Had a guy in the group this morning of the job seekers. I'd asked the question. This guy says, well, I try to have something planned continuously throughout the day. I asked, where's the time for things that you need to get done? He said, well, I'll reschedule something during the day till if I have to get that done, I'll reschedule that. And I said, one thing, you're looking for a job right now. Your normal psyche, your comfort zone is you're in a job, so there's no way you can know what your day is really going to look like because you don't have a job and there's a lot of moving parts to it. I really recommend putting margins in there. Now, I'm speaking from experience. It was about 10 years ago. I think it was the fall of 2006 that my daughter sent me a text one Sunday morning and said, Dad, you have got to listen to these sermons. Please listen to these sermons that Tim is preaching. And it was week 2 of a 6 or 8 series, and he was speaking. He was speaking on margins, having margins in our life. And I ended up. I listened to the 2 I'd missed. Listened to the rest of them, except on the last one. I went to Hill Country and listened to the sermon itself, and I've listened to them half a dozen times since then. But it's about margins and putting margins in your life. Today, we're all pretty energized, other than a few moments want to take a nap a while ago. But I had things that I needed to get done today, but I had to be somewhere at 10. and I had to be somewhere at 2, and I had to be on a call with you at 12 minutes after 5, right? So those three big things where I needed to be. Had some other things that I just, okay, I'm going to get these things done. I had a referral partner text me, wanted to know if there's something I could do to help him out, and it's kind of a joint venture for us, and I did. Took about the whole thing, probably about an hour, in about 3 different time chunks. It made up about an hour. Had to request something, got it in, looked at it, proofread it, sent it off. Had to get on the phone and give a credit card. So the whole thing was maybe an hour, but I didn't have my whole day planned. It was easy for me, and here's what was interesting. It didn't drain me. If I'd had my day planned out and didn't have these spaces in there, I mean, doesn't that stuff, when somebody all of a sudden needs something and you need to provide it, I don't know, Hurdy, does it stress you out when you need to do something like that?
Yeah, because when you've got a schedule already made out and you don't have the room in there, and then somebody needs something from a client standpoint that's emergency or whatever they call it, yeah, it stresses you out. You kind of get wound up. Absolutely. Because it interrupts the pattern, it interrupts the flow you're in. Yes.
Yeah, and it sucks the energy out of you. I remember just
energy vampires is what I call those. Energy vampires.
I'm writing that down. I like that. Energy vampires. Yeah, I was back in my early 40s. I was energy vampires. I went through my triathlon phase, and I was down Victoria in an open lake swim, and I don't mind the water. Love the water, but I either like to have a scuba tank on with a regulator in my mouth or a life vest on. And this is an open water swim, and it was a half-mile swim. It was the first time I'd done a half-mile open water swim, period, even in practice. And I was about halfway to the turn, so I was, eighth of, anyway, I was out there a ways, and I was pretty psyched up for this thing. I was very psyched up for it. And all of a sudden, I as you're swimming, I kept seeing something as I would roll. Roll your head back and forth, and I realized there was a guy over there. He had gotten kicked in the throat real hard, and he was struggling. And the jet ski life guard and the jet ski hadn't seen him yet, so I got to him, and he had his sense about him, but he was hurting. Well, that took maybe a minute, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes. Seemed like forever, but couldn't have been more than a couple of minutes before they got over, grabbed him, and I kept swimming. Thought I was going to drown before it was all over with. I was wore completely out. Now, this is going to be the first triathlon in about 3 years, me doing it. I was pretty sure I was going to be able to complete the run without walking. All I could do was walk the run because I depleted that energy right then from an unexpected event. Hadn't thought about that. So something you said made me think about it. But in a Harvard Business Review, John points out about the management of energy, and in it the authors point out that people need margin for many aspects of their health and their effectiveness on the job. They need time to recover from difficulties and regain their emotional footing. Without that margin, people become negative. It just dawned on me, I've got a book a couple of books that Tim Hawks recommended about margin. Anyway, we'll post. I forget which ones they are, and we'll post it on the Facebook site. Well, he goes on to say, this Harvard Business Review article you need intermittent recovery when things happen. That when we're confronted with relentless demands and unexpected challenges, people tend to slip into negative emotions, the fight or flight mode. And fight or flight emotions also make it impossible to think clearly, logically, and reflectively. When executives learn to recognize what what kinds of events trigger their negative emotions, they gain greater capacity to take control of their reactions. Moving on, he asked, do you give yourself space in your schedule for the unexpected and to recover psychologically and emotionally? An author, Gene Hershey, writes, it's extremely important not to have one's life all blocked out, not to have the days and weeks totally organized. These gaps allow us to use our energy more wisely. So,
yeah,
energy. How'd this thing start off with? He said, why you should focus on energy instead of time.
Yeah. Wow. Makes sense now.
So go ahead.
I said it makes sense now.
Yep. What are the activities? So yeah, he leaves the chapter with 3 questions. What are the activities, people, tasks, and places that sap your energy? Number 2, what are the activities, people, tasks, and places that give you greater energy? And number 3, in what areas of your life are you not maximizing your energy and the energy of the people around you?
Yeah.
Tap into things that increase your energy capacity. Manage your energy for the things that matter most to you.
Interesting.
You had a birthday, didn't you?
What?
Didn't you have a birthday yesterday or day before?
Yeah, I did. Sunday. Thanks for bringing it up. Appreciate it. Thanks for bringing it up.
All right. Herdy, that's all I've got. If anybody wants to ask a question, *6. Come online. Give you a couple of minutes here.
That's good stuff.
What sucks your energy? What drains your energy?
When I do have stuff planned, and when things pop up like they do in my business, where people get stuck on something and my time gets interrupted, and I'm not blaming them. I could say no, and say you're going to have to wait in line. But when I feel like when I'm out of whack is when I can't get anything done I need to get done. That's when my energy really goes down. When I have a plan and then the plan doesn't work, that drives me crazy. That just wears me out.
Do you schedule margins? Blocks of time?
Do. I do schedule time blocks to solve things, yes, and usually that's in the evening or during the day.
Well, let's do that one back up. Do you have blanks in your calendar?
Yes.
That there's nothing scheduled during the day?
Yes, absolutely. Because I have so many things I have to task on that I leave unexpected time. Because I know I just know from how I've dealt with in the past, my experience has allowed me to create those. And I don't think I knew I was doing them, but I've always left time to handle things now. That's a natural thing that's happened through the involvement of my business. Absolutely. It still doesn't mean I don't get grumpy.
What music do you energizes you?
Christian and rock and roll.
I like. I didn't turn it on a while ago. I turned on a rock and roll one day last week, and I just put in rock and roll in YouTube and just started letting it pick and
yeah.
I guess in my rock and roll, I've gone through different periods of my life with different types of music. My rock and roll years, I really wasn't paying attention to the names. My brother-in-law can tell you everything about all the rock and roll guys, but I can't tell you much at all. And
now we listen to when Yvonne and I are coming up from work. Sometimes we'll listen. She likes and I listen to it. We listen to classical radio, which calms me down on the way home. Kind of violins and orchestra stuff is really cool. I like that too. I do.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I got to listening to the other day. I was thinking back to something in high school, and I started thinking about the music I was listening to in high school, and this was working on some successes and some little departure points, and what was going on then. And I started thinking about the music I was listening to. It was a little bit of Beatles, but it was the Monkees, Bread. Listen to those on YouTube. There's a couple others I'd forgotten the name of the bands. Don't remember right now, but I remember the songs. And it kind of takes you back into a period. And but here's the deal: the more we recognize, and this is those departure points, where we had successful departure points and what helped create those successful departure points in our past, that we can recreate now to get out of our logical thinking, to get back into some better creativity. I mean, I'm 62, and I want my next 20 years to be my best years. I've had some pretty good years. But I want my next 20 years to be my best years ever. And I know if I'm going to do that, I've got to get back into some creative modes. And I think I've done much better at that the last 6 to 8 months, especially the last since about, I won't go into it right now, but March the 6th. And moving forward from March the 6th of this year, and I've been recreating some successful departure points and realizing some things that help me move through some challenges.